Hello, this is Linda Vetras Nichols, evolutionaryhealer.com, and I have with me the most amazing person, Liz Kirk. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. This is amazing. And so is your story, Liz. So tell us more or fill us in on your story of transformation.
Sure. For me, the biggest thing for me was I was just living my life, having a good time. And when I was 33 is when the clock on motherhood really started ticking away for me. I had been with my husband for a while and we were getting ready to get married. And we knew we were going to want to start a family fairly quickly because neither one of us was getting any younger. And I had been doing a lot of personal development and personal learning about health and wellness and getting, I'd been on a journey of weight loss for so long. So I knew that at 33, there may be some challenges that I maybe would want to be proactive and go to the doctor and make sure that everything was going to be okay and smooth sailing, because I had been on the birth control pill for over 10 years and I had done some crazy diets in my day trying to, battle that weight. So I went to the doctor pretty much expecting everything to be okay because I had done a lot of work on myself, only to be handed this diagnosis of an autoimmune disease that my doctor said, if left untreated and unaddressed, would make it nearly impossible for me to get pregnant or carry a full-term pregnancy.
Wow.
That was really scary at first. And then I was able to collect myself and realize that I had already done a lot of learning on my own and that I had the tools and I had the awareness to go out and find the proper help. Like, I knew my doctor just wanted to put me on the standard drug protocol or whatever the pharmaceutical was. And I knew that that wasn't the answer for me. So I was going to go on my own journey and clear everything up. And now not only do I have one beautiful little boy, but I'm currently expecting my second to happen in about 2 months.
Yeah, and it's not a boy.
And it's not a boy, it's a girl, that's right.
Yeah, so salt and pepper shakers, you'll have them. I love it. That's so exciting. Congratulations. And now, you've moved on to helping other women take a look at that picture. And tell us just real quick a little bit about what you're up to.
Sure. I've realized that I really love helping other women not only overcome whatever struggles they may be having with pregnancy, because the medical community doesn't really step in until you've been trying for a woman who wants to get pregnant feels like forever.
Right.
But also just because I feel so strongly about all of the issues and health problems that we have in our world, in our country right now. And so much of that starts even before birth that people don't realize. So I really feel like getting to the mamas and helping them have the healthiest pregnancy possible and helping them get themselves in order is really the best and most effective and cost-effective way of then helping our children be healthier and helping them grow up into healthier adults. So it's really, really for me about helping the mamas get ready to become pregnant so that it's easy for them and it's healthy and it's enjoyable. And who doesn't want to help ladies get pregnant and realize their dreams of being a mom? It's so much fun.
Yeah, and a healthy pregnancy tends to lead to a healthy and easy delivery. Who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. In this day when we have so many complications and there's so many stories about all of the horrors of pregnancy, it doesn't have to be that way.
I love it. Okay, so Think First or End Up Last. That's actually a book you've written, and now you're expanding out into pregnancy. So Think First or End Up Last when it comes to pregnancy. Love it. All right, so you are your best expert, and you just took it in your hands, and you are a health coach. And were you a health coach at the time?
I had just barely begun my health coach training.
Okay.
I had been on the path sort of to becoming. It was one of those things where I was devoting so much time and so enjoyed doing all of the geeky research into nutrition and wellness, and people started coming to me asking my advice, and I was like, hey, I really like this. Maybe I should find a way to do this professionally.
Nice, and you have. And so one of the first things you do with women is waking them up. And so tell us a little bit about what does that look like when you help them to wake up? Wake up to what?
The first, it's really just wake up to the realization that A, it might be harder than they're thinking. B, they don't have to wait. Like traditionally in the medical community, you're told that you have to be trying for 12 months before your doctor will even talk to you about anything related to fertility issues. And for those of us, especially for those of us who wait until later in life to have children, it's like a year is forever.
Yeah.
And the
right?
whole time you're adding stress onto yourself because you're like, after a point you start thinking, oh, maybe there's something wrong, but nobody will talk to you about it.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing with waking up is just recognize that the earlier you start planning and preparing, the better, because, the universe will give us signs along the way if we're off track in any area, and pregnancy and fertility is one of those ways as well. And Tony Robbins calls it the feather, the brick in the truck. Like it starts out with a tiny sign, maybe a little, you may not even think that it's related. And then you ignore that.
Yeah.
It becomes a bigger sign and maybe that big sign is now you're at the doctor's office considering IVF or something like that. And that's like a $20,000, 10% or 20% success rate, depending on how old you are.
Wow.
So my goal is to help women wake up to the fact that they can do more and there's more out there for them to consider than just, okay, we're going to try to have a baby now.
Yeah, right. I like that. The feather, the brick in the truck. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And ask questions. So ask questions of like your doctor or other women or coming to someone such as yourself. What do you mean by ask questions?
All of that.
All of the above. That was easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on.
Moving right along. Do you have anything to add on ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, definitely asking questions of your doctor, but like I said, your doctor may not be willing to discuss anything with you that's really of substantive value for 12 months. So talking to your girlfriends, because I think that's one area. I mean, women, we know women like to talk about their personal lives and their struggles, but I think that in some ways fertility and getting pregnant is still something that's not talked about as widely as it used to be. So it can be really hard, and it can be a bit of a stigma too. Like you don't want somebody, there's a really big personal like self-identification that happens around fertility. So it can be hard to bridge that subject, and it can be hard for us as women to even ask another woman if she's, we don't want to, you know what I mean? Like it's really hard.
Absolutely. There's so much choice going on out there right now because society is not saying you have to get married and have a baby. That's not the thing anymore. And women are being nomads and taking off all over creation, and they're not thinking about pregnancy. And I'm sure they're looking at you when you're saying older and they're, into their 30s. You were in the beginnings of your 30s. So to them, it was like, what are you talking about? So the paradigm's really shifted when and I'm 60. So when I first started out, I was married at 21, but all of a sudden I was 22, like within a month, right? And I didn't have my first until I was about 25. And that was still very early. People were waiting till at least 28 years old. And so, in the early 30s, I think right now I don't think anybody thinks that's all that old, although for you, maybe some of your friends had already gotten pregnant. Is that what was happening in your world?
Well, it was, and I also knew that from an obstetric and from a medical perspective, 35 is really where they start considering you of advanced maternal age. I mean, 35 in this day is not old, but they know that when you're over 35, there's an additional risk of complications. There's additional risk of, complications during pregnancy, during delivery. And really what it boils down to, and this is, a question that you can ask yourself when you're thinking about wanting to have a baby, is how have I been living my life up until this point? And how is that going to affect my baby, my pregnancy, my birth, my children? Right. Mm-hmm. Because it's something that we don't really think about until we're pregnant. And by the time we're pregnant, which we'll get to, I know, in a little bit, but by the time we're pregnant, it's a little bit too late. I mean, not completely too late, but ideally we want to start thinking about it earlier. And so the longer you wait to get pregnant, that's why we have the higher complication rates, because we've had time for all of these things to build up in our lives that we weren't addressing or we weren't thinking were an issue.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And be open to change. What do you mean by that?
When you're facing, there's a couple of different areas of that. It depends on where you are in your journey, actually. So the biggest thing is recognizing that you may have to make some changes to get the dream family that you want. You know, what you've been doing maybe isn't the most, and we know that, you know, you should reduce or quit smoking, you should reduce or quit drinking. You know, there are things that kind of go hand in hand with getting pregnant, but there are a lot of other areas that can significantly affect your chances of becoming pregnant, as well as the type of pregnancy and birth that you have, that we need to consider. So you have to open up your mind to what those other things are, as well as, if you're a little bit into your journey and maybe having a little bit of a hard time, recognizing that there are options and that you do have choices that you can make, and that it is possible, even if you feel like even if you're starting to feel like it's not. And that's really about finding inspiration, finding a good mentor, finding somebody that can help you navigate this path, not just from a medical or nutrition or, you know, in the physical sense, but also there's a lot of emotions and a lot of mind stuff that goes along with getting pregnant, and finding somebody to navigate that path is really important.
Just that mindset, that letting go piece, because you watch people, you know, do all kinds of things and end up adopting, and boom, all of a sudden they get pregnant, you know, and then there's ones that didn't do all the other stuff, and just in adopting, boom, they got pregnant. It's just so interesting to watch all of that. Okay, so think differently. So complete control. So tell us more about complete control.
So we have the final say. At the end of the day, it is our body. And we have a lot more ability to affect the things that go on in terms of our fertility and the pregnancy and the birth and the babies than we think. We've become so conditioned to think that somebody else has the answer, or somebody else has, you know, the power to help us, or we're powerless or helpless. So we have to recognize that at the end of the day, we are in charge, and we are the ones that are taking the action or not taking the action. So even if you go to a doctor and the doctor gives you advice, are you taking that advice? It's totally up to you. We make the decisions in our lives. We're more than we think we do. And the actions that we take can lead to change, can lead to the outcomes that we want. And we have control over so much of our lives and our bodies and our fertility, from toxins to our diet to, you know, this, that, there's so many different areas. So we really have to recognize that. And there's something very powerful too in recognizing that power and control that we have. And really,
right.
I think it helps, because so many people that are wanting to become pregnant and having a little bit of a problem with it, they start to feel powerless or broken.
Yeah, right. Like broken. I hear you. Okay. And then doctors. So they're not gods. What else you want to say?
Doctors are not gods. No. And like I was saying, you know, we have been conditioned largely to believe that doctors have all the answers. And many times, this is not to say that they don't have their place and that the techniques that they have don't work, but we also have to recognize that they're not always the final say, and that they're not the only say. Yeah. Even if you decide that you're going to go with a doctor and you're needing IVF or whatever, there's so many other things that you can do from a holistic and an alternative perspective that can boost the chances. Because when you realistically look at like IVF, for example, not only is it incredibly expensive and pretty much never covered by insurance, it also has a extremely low success rate. And the older you get, the lower the success rate. It's like we're talking 10 to 20%. That's not very much.
Right. And spell that out for everybody too, Liz.
Spell out, I'm sorry?
You were using the acronym. Spell that out. Like
in vitro fertilization. It's one of the, I guess you could call it, advanced techniques when you have infertility.
In vitro fertilization. Okay. And then what about pharmaceuticals?
Again, pharmaceuticals kind of go hand in hand with doctors. We're so used to a quick fix or a pill or and that's part of why we need a doctor, right? Because they're the only ones that can give us the pharmaceuticals that's going to fix us. But at the end of the day, we've got pharmaceuticals that oftentimes, if you actually read the package insert, have much more side effects than they have benefit.
Yeah.
They're not that effective. I mean, the rate of efficacy for these things to get approved by the FDA is sort of sad, really. Not that, again, not that pharmaceuticals don't have their place, but we have to look at it in perspective and as a piece of the whole. And they don't address the root cause. Like,
right.
The body is doing this, like my autoimmune disease, right? Autoimmune means my body's immune system is attacking my body, right? Like, that doesn't just happen. So giving me a pill that addresses the symptom, like, why is it happening? Let's talk about why this is occurring to begin with. And that's much more effective. Yes, it may take longer, but it's much more effective, much more cost effective, and leads to better outcomes at the end than simply throwing a pill at it to resolve the symptom, in which case you might wind up taking more pills. So pharmaceuticals, while great, they're definitely not the holy grail that I think a lot of people have come to believe.
They're not. Yeah, they're not preventive. It's not preventive medicine. It's Band-Aid medicine, and it does
lead
really not to the next thing.
Sorry, they're not curative. So
no. So pregnancy is too late. You've addressed that several times. So can probably move on to conditioning and fertility. Tell us more about that.
So one of the things that I've noticed with fertility is, and I've talked about it a little bit already too, but is the conditioning that we have really as a society today, and how beyond just the environmental toxins and what we're putting in our bodies on a daily basis in nutrition and exercise, but we as women constantly are barraged with these messages about how we're not enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not thin enough, we're not, and maybe from our loved ones, maybe from our coworkers, from all these different places, we're getting these messages that we're not enough. Well, eventually, is it any wonder then that we have such a high rate of fertility issues? I mean, if you're not enough, how on a I don't know the right word right now, I'm going to blame it on the baby
mindset,
brain.
yeah. Sure.
Yeah, from a mindset perspective, like, if you're not enough, why would your body allow you to become pregnant? If you're not enough now, how would you then be enough to support another life?
Yep.
So that's a huge piece, these messages that we're getting. And also, we have this huge amount of stress in our lives now. And, the technology that we have is great, but it's not necessarily helping our level of stress. And we know that stress plays a huge role in hormone balance, and it can lead to physical symptoms. So it's no wonder that we're, again, having these problems with fertility, because we've been conditioned that this high stress lifestyle and all it, go and get more done, be more productive, multitask. Like, is it any wonder that we're running into fertility problems now? And again, when you're really later to get pregnant, you've had more time for these things to stack up.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, and then wake-up calls. Man, you had your wake-up call. I was a little late, but at least you got it. At least you dealt with it. And, there's a wonderful happy ending at the end of the wake-up call. So, wake up sooner than later. It's really the bottom line to that one. Anything else you want to say there?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to fertility, we have so many things that we have come to, again, this goes back to conditioning too. We've come to accept these things like endometriosis and PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, things like PMS and mood swings around that time of the month, right? We've come to accept these things as normal, but they're not. They're your body's warning system saying, waving a flag. It's like a feather, kind of, or maybe a brick, depending on where you're at in your journey, waving its little hand saying, hello, there's something out of balance, out of whack. We need to address this.
Yeah.
And most often going to your doctor, being put on the pill or something to help regulate your cycles, it's not addressing the root cause. It's not going to help you when you wake up and want to get pregnant, because you're just suppressing things.
Wow.
So
That's
those
big.
are little ways that you can, start to recognize when you might have some issues.
Yeah, right? Okay. And then legacy. Tell us more about that.
Legacy really boils down to a little bit of what I was saying earlier about why I'm doing what I'm doing. Our children are getting sicker and sicker. Our children, we're having higher rates of autism, higher rates of ADHD, higher rates of pediatric cancer in all forms, higher rates of childhood obesity. Type 1 diabetes, which used to be adult onset diabetes, has had to be reclassified because children are getting it. So they can't call it type 2 diabetes.
Right.
Used to be adult onset diabetes, and now it's no longer called that because children are getting it. There are so many things. And when we prepare ourselves for pregnancy, during pregnancy, and nourish our children properly, we can reduce and eliminate so many of these things and set them up for better. I mean, to use a real fancy scientific word, epigenetics is becoming a huge area of research, and they're finding out more and more that your genes do not dictate what your outcomes are. And a lot of what epigenetics is studying is the role of so-called alternative health, or stress reduction, or nutrition, or environmental toxin reduction, and the role that these play in disease. And not only that, so we all want healthier children. We all want to do right by our children. But if you're carrying a little girl like I am now, her eggs that she's going to have to produce basically your grandchildren are formed while she's in the womb, before she's even born. So if you're getting really technical about it and you're carrying a girl, you're not only affecting the health of her, but you're affecting the health of your future grandchildren as well.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, and we don't think that way, that's for sure. Okay, so to summarize, you are your best expert. Think differently, know that it is okay to think differently, and pregnancy is actually too late. So sum that up for us, maybe give us some tips and tricks and some of the things that you work with your clients on.
So the biggest thing about all of that really is, at the end of the day, you are your best expert, and you have to take responsibility for your health. And you can't just hand it over to your doctor and be like, oh, well, I went and had my physical and it's fine. Once I got my diagnosis of autoimmune disease, I looked back at 5 years of blood work and saw the markers of that autoimmune disease at least 5 years going back. And nobody said a word.
Wow. Yeah, see, you weren't in the right model. You were not in a preventive model. You were in the flat out medical model, and that is huge, huge difference right there. So very cool. Okay, and so tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so recognize that the people who you think are the experts may not always be. They might be great, but always do your own research and be your own advocate and find all the information that you can. Find somebody to help you if if doing all this research isn't your thing.
Yeah, like me, it's not. So I'd hire you in a heartbeat. Thank you very much.
Exactly. It's a lot easier to ask somebody who's already been there or knows, Yeah. So it's kind of like you don't work on your car necessarily. And that goes hand in hand then with thinking differently. That's not the way that a lot of us operate anymore these days. We are fully invested quite often in the sick care model of healthcare, which we have in this country. And also the fact that you may think that you're doing really well and being really healthy. I did, and I still wound up with a problem. So just don't accept anything as, the truth or the gospel. Go and double check and expose yourself to new ideas and open yourself up to possibilities. And really if you really are wanting to invest in the best pregnancy and the best start for your child, but when you get pregnant, it's too late. We find out that we're pregnant. By the time we find out we're pregnant, we're about 4 weeks into a pregnancy. And there's so much that goes on in those early weeks that if you wait until you're pregnant before you start making changes to better your situation, I mean, obviously there's a lot you can do when you're pregnant, but ideally you want to start before you get pregnant, and even before you start trying, to help avoid some of the issues that can pop up and that can delay your pregnancy or your conception as well.
Right. I remember meeting with a doctor of integrative medicine, and I'm trying to think how old I was, maybe 45. And he's like, you're going to be dead in the next 5 years unless you get on this particular, supplement regime, because like, look at this, here it is. And he laid it all out and how it led like straight to cancer. It was like, amazing. I had dark field microscopy done, and now they're saying, well, that's not that, whatever. Well, it saved my life, so I don't care. And Liz, you have an amazing it's an online test, if you will, people can assessment that people can take. So I think that's really cool. All that you offer, very nice. Okay, and you have a free gift for everybody: 5 simple steps for paving the way to pregnancy and birth. Very cool. So that's your gift to everybody. Thank you so much for that. You want to tell us a little bit about your free gift?
Sure, it's my pleasure to be able to offer that. And it's really the cornerstone of the work that I do with my clients. It kind of gives you an overview of the 5 key areas that I address and work through with my clients. And it gives you sort of a primer, I guess, as to why each area is important, and as well as it gives you a few simple suggestions that you can immediately implement. And it is for paving the way to pregnancy and birth, but it's also just a great guide for anybody to use, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we mustn't forget about the daddies either, because daddies play a key role, and that's something that isn't talked about as much as well. Men need to think about their fertility as well. And so this freebie is not just for the mommies, it's for the daddies too. And we'll give you a really great start on your journey to having a healthy pregnancy.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. I've seen it. It is absolutely gorgeous. On top of it's really detailed. Liz is the researcher queen. And she knows her stuff. She's well educated, well versed, and she's lived it. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I love it. So thanks again, Liz. So 5 simple steps for paving the way to pregnancy and birth. Just go back out to the email that you got, that you came out to this interview from, and below Liz's picture and her bio is the link to click, which is the lizkirk.com/superhero link, and it'll take you right out and you can opt in and grab her freebie. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else you want to share before we take off here?
Go forth and multiply.
Oh, listen to her. Just bunny up.
We need more enlightened joining us in this world. So the more mommies and daddies that can procreate from a place of awareness and health and healing is the better for the future of the human race.
Yeah, it's for sure. For real, though. Thanks again, Liz. So great to have you.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye-bye.
Bye.